Hey there. Welcome to CKLA Chats. I am DLC Sarah Foster Yankee, and joining me is my co host.
Ashley Giles, DLC, grades 4 through 5.
And we are Team 3 DLCs. So today we're going to be talking about Lesson 6 in the fourth grade, Unit 6 on contemporary fiction, um, writing your aspiration story in the house on Mango Street.
And so to start off, lesson 6, we're going to be bringing back Vignette 1, of course, the house on Mango Street. Remember, it's a lot of close rereading of the vignettes. Vignette 2, they're going to take another glance at, titled My Name, and Vignette 3, A Smart Cookie. So the purpose of this lesson it's writing heavily focused. So it says here there is no reading in this lesson, right? Reading. Okay, students are referring back, like we said, because they have already read these, and so they're close reading during this lesson on various skills. So students are referring back to the vignette as examples of literary elements and strong writing. So isn't it awesome, Sarah, to have students reread something familiar,
Mhm.
right? And to pull skills and these literary elements from those complex texts that they're already familiar with.
Right. So basically, we're close reading so that we can come back now and imitate those craft moves that we've seen Sandra Cisneros make in the house on Mango Street.
Right. So we're creating writers,
Yeah.
right? Practicing those moves. So writing, it starts. We can go. It starts off as broken up into mini components, little short mini components. Um, First, you're reviewing from the previous days, um, feedback that you've given students, and they're going to talk about reviewing some of the story elements. Of course, fourth grade, this is going to be a review. Um, so at the very beginning, you're going to direct students to go back to Journal 5.5, where they're talking about Esperanza's aspirations, and you are going to go over the questions. And at the end of the previous lesson, lesson 5, it tells the teacher to look over their work, and provide feedback. So ensure that your teachers have done that, because the very first component is to have students look at that feedback and to go over some evaluative questions, go over those literal questions about figurative language, and talk about Esperanza and her conversations. Um, and you are basically checking for understanding. The teacher will be checking for understanding to make sure that students understand what these literary elements, what's covered within the vignettes that they are reading. The teacher should also be explaining that she's provided feedback to the students. The students are supposed to quietly read their feedback. Um, and if they have any questions, you should see students answering their hands about the feedback that they have from the teacher. And this is all coming from the Writer's Journal 5.5 from the previous day. Um, and as a reminder, because we're not talking about that activity, the prompt was um, students had to write their own story of aspiration. Um, it says, what do you or your characters want from you in life that's different from the way things are today? Your story will tell us what you or your character's aspirations are and how you and your character work to achieve them. So they're basically going back on a paper that they just look at the feedback on a paper that they wrote yesterday, previous. Um, and then they're going to be the teacher's going to show them the chart. It's a chart that talks about the character's aspirations, and then they have to provide an example for it. This chart would be good if it is displayed in the classroom, and the teacher, of course, should be modeling. Um, and this is how they're going to be planning. They are starting their writing of their next chapter. And so this chart basically it says, and I don't know if I have it on the next page, the chart, the character's aspirations, about the setting, about the sensory detail, the things that they should include in their writing. So they should include setting. Here it is. Yes. So that's activity page 5.5. So they're looking back over this sheet, over this page, which talks about these literary elements that they should have in their writing. And so that kind of concludes that first portion. So they should include dialogue, they should include setting, they should include how the character felt and thought. So just ensuring that in their writing that these are the elements that they need to include. Um, and that takes us to the next section for lesson six. Lesson six for 10 minutes, and we can go back if you want to.
Mhm.
Sarah, it says share ideas and peer feedback. This is going to be a partner activity. So you should see teachers pairing them up in partners. Hopefully by now we know who their partners are. And basically they're going to read their papers. They're going to read their ideas to their partner and ask the partner to provide. And the partner has to provide. You should see students get, or teachers need to make sure that they're very clear and explicit about the partners need to give at least two pieces of feedback to the students. So after I share my ideas with my partner needs to give me two pieces of ideas about feedback. It says, tell your partner something that you found interesting about their story. And then also choose something in the story that you'd like to know more about. So we want our students to add more detail, a little bit more clarity. Elaborate a little bit more on a certain section. So those are the two pieces of feedback that students should be giving their partner. And basically, each partner will have about 5 minutes to share their story and gather that feedback, and then we're going to switch. Teacher, of course, is circulating around the room, and pretty much that's it for this section. So, teacher circulating around the room, prompting, helping students to um, give that accurate and good feedback. And that'll take us to the next section, which is writing your actual story now. So we first on 5.5 drafted our ideas out, what dialogue are we going to have, what story elements, the craft ideas that we're going to have in our story. We shared our ideas, the partner gave us feedback, and now they're going to write for 20 minutes. Um, it says they have planning time, they have 20 minutes to work quietly. They're going to look back at activity page 5.5. There is a blank page with lines that the students are going to be writing on. Teachers should be reminding the students to describe their character in full detail, where's the setting, and explicitly, clearly discuss what happens. Once we get down to about 2 minutes left in their writing, so this is like what do we used to call it when they just write it down real quick? A flash draft,
Mhm.
right? And so this is like a flash draft, and they're writing, and then the 2 minute mark is almost near the 20 minutes. We're going to give the students a reminder. And of course, as the students are writing, teacher is circulating around the room, providing guidance for students who need that support. Perfect time to pull a small group for those students who need that extra support with getting those ideas on paper. There is a challenge for this section. If they finish their writing before the 20 minutes, ask them to go back and make sure they've covered all the why questions and all the hows. Making sure they go back to that chart on 5.5. Did you include the dialogue? Did you include how the characters felt? So just if they finish, nope, you're not done. Make sure you have all the components that are needed based off Writer's Journal 5.5. So basically encourage them to write long. If you're done, just let's write longer. And then that'll conclude our independent time, that 20 minutes. And then so next component is partner feedback and revision. So back to their partner. So this would be a great way. Hopefully we're telling teachers to have these partners already established. That's going to cut down on pacing. That'll keep our pacing, where it needs to be. Partner, they should already be established. And for this section, the partner is going to read. So they're going to switch papers. Okay, I'm not going to read my paper to my partner. My partner is going to read my paper. The teacher should provide guidelines for what the students should focus on as they read. So there are guidelines provided Like, what are they reading for? What's the purpose of them for the revision or the feedback process for this section? So students should be looking for, make sure the teacher explicitly states what are they looking for in their writing. So the reader should know, what is the character's aspiration? Is it clear? Does it clearly say the aspiration? Are there sensory details in this paper, in this writing? Is the setting detailed? Remember way back to lesson one when they visualize? Can they visualize the setting? Is it enough details for them to visualize the setting? And so there are some guided questions that the teacher can provide the student as they are reading their partner's paper. Um, Both partners provide that feedback to each other. You give the journals back, and the students will make the necessary changes. And that'll conclude for this portion.
All right. And I see now that I have the cub in the wrong place.
So the club was, the student will know the aspirations of the main characters of their original narrative. They will use the details and figurative language to convey information about characters. And based off what we just talked about, right, students will write an original narrative um, on a narrative
E.
on the theme of aspiration, employing detailed descriptions and figurative language using the writer's journal. Everything that is included in the writing is something that has been explicitly taught.
Mm-hmm.
That concludes the writing portion.
Right. That brings us to the second component of lesson 6, which is speaking and listening. It was divided into 3 sections. In the first section, practice reading stories. You're going to see the teacher explaining the task. Basically, students are going to share and listen to their class stories, just like real authors do, because it helps see and hear things about their own work before it's complete. So basically, they're going to be students reading their stories to their partners, and they're going to be giving some supportive feedback to their partner. Again, for example, the type of feedback they could give would be, is their partner's voice loud enough? Is their enunciation clear? And are they expressing the voice of the characters in the dialogue? So when they're reading the dialogue, do all the characters sound the same, or are they changing their voice based on the character that is speaking? So while the students are doing that, the teacher is circulating, making sure that they're listening to each other's stories and checking on their understanding. She can ask yes or no questions. She can ask questions about the details, have them make inferences about the stories that they've heard, or asking them direct questions about the content or theme of the work that they just heard. So they will do that for 10 minutes. And then the bulk of the speaking and listening component is presentation of stories, whole group. So for this part of the lesson, the teacher has determined ahead of time who's going to present, or the order in which the students will be presenting their stories. So it's basically she's selecting different students in the class to read their stories to the class. The audience, the students who aren't reading, they're going to be listening for how each author addressed the prompts from Writer's Journal 5.5, how they address the task for this chapter, and they're going to be taking notes in a blank page in their journal. I think there are some, yeah, there's some evaluative questions that they are listening for. The right section. Yeah. Okay, so they're listening for what aspirations does the character have? How do we know? What is the setting? How do you envision the setting when you listen to the story? So, like Ashley said, were there enough details in order for them to be able to visualize the setting as the author was reading? And also, what happens in the story, and how does this event link to the character's aspirations? Okay. So, our audience members are listening to the reader's story with those questions in mind, and they're taking notes as they're listening. And then the teacher is going to ask the audience questions about the presenter's story once the presenter is done reading. And then to wrap up, speaking and listening, we're going to have a reflection about 5 minutes. It does say that this part of the lesson is sort of optional. Basically, the teacher would pick a prompt, focus on student generated writing, the reading. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm doing something. So the teacher's going to pick one of these evaluative questions on the teacher's guide on page 123. And students will write a reflection on one of them. How does reading Sandra Cisneros' stories help you develop as a writer? Or how did you use feedback to help you revise your writing? Why is it important to listen to feedback? Or what did you enjoy about writing your own aspiration stories? Give an example of something you are really proud of. So basically, just having them reflect on the process, on the writing process, and being authors. And as usual, the teacher's gonna wrap up by congratulating the students on their hard work writing and respectfully listening to each other present their stories and collect the writer's journals. After class, the teacher is going to review Writer's Journal 5.5 by reading the chapters and giving the students some supportive feedback on their story. It says you may also provide feedback on ways students could continue working on their stories. And for some data for yourself, identify any universal concerns about their writing that, that you probably want to address moving forward in the units. And the same formative assessment as in the writing component of the lesson. We're only working with one this lesson, 5.5. And that concludes lesson 6. All right. So thank you for watching. Here's our contact information if you would like to get in touch with us. And we'll see you on the next CKLA chat.
Thank you.